Well, today on Puritan Rant, I want to talk about the Puritan Stephen Charnock. Stephen Charnock was an amazing man, a 17th century Puritan, and according to those that knew him, he was an eminent divine, and he was an eminent scholar. As a matter of fact, he was highly educated, graduated Cambridge, graduated Oxford, later became the proctor of Oxford, and eventually became famous really for being so prolifically fluent in the biblical languages that reputation preceded him among all of his contemporaries. But Charnock was an amazing man. He was a pastor. He was a scholar. Stephen Charnock, above everything, was also renowned for his personal piety, for his love of devotional writing. As a matter of fact, the book that I want to look at is entitled The Existence and Attributes of God. This book, which is known for being Charnock's magnum opus, and it was collected and put together after he had been translated into glory at the age of 52. That is also another amazing fact about these Puritans, is that so many of them died so young. But Stephen Charnock did not die without leaving us a legacy, a virtual treasured trove of literature from his works that have been compiled to his book on the atonement called Christ Crucified. Stephen Charnock wrote on so many different subjects, but this is the big one. This book is really the one that if you're going to read anything from Charnock, you must get this book. I've heard it said that John MacArthur considered this book to be the best book that he ever read, apart from the Bible, that it changed his life. I have a dear friend who has read this book more than once and will attest to its profound impact in his life. And once again, it's said of the Puritans that it really doesn't matter where in the Puritans you read. You are bound to be encouraged and challenged all at the same time. And this, of course, applies certainly to Stephen Charnock. And so I want to read a section out of this book entitled On the Holiness of God. There is so much in this book that is virtually 1,000 pages long. Sometimes it's sold in 2 volumes. But I want to read this section out of Charnock because, again, the reason we're doing Puritan Rant in the first place is really to stress this idea that the Puritans have a lot to teach us, and that hopefully as we read the Puritans, we are going to recover something from them that the church today desperately needs. And this certainly applies to the subject of the holiness of God. And so I want you to get a taste of Charnock, his brilliance and his command for theology and for these impassioned thoughts about God. You know, this book was written really on a devotional level, or in a devotional context. Charnock wrote this sort of in his private times. Nobody even knew this existed until really it was finished and collected after his death. But this is what Stephen Charnock was doing with God in his own personal piety, was writing things like this. So let me read you his exposition of Job 4:18. The heavens are not pure in his sight, and his angels he charges with folly. This is what Charnock said. Though God has crowned the angels with an unspotted sanctity, and he has placed them in a habitation of glory, yet, as illustrious as they are, they have an unworthiness in their own nature to appear before the throne of so holy a God. Their holiness grows dim and pale in his presence. It is but a weak shadow of that divine purity whose light is so glorious that it makes them cover their faces out of weakness to behold it, and cover their feet out of shame in themselves. They are not pure in his sight, because though they love God, which is a principle of holiness, as much as they can, yet not so much as he deserves. They love him with the intensest degree according to their power, but not with the intensest degree according to their own amiableness. For they cannot infinitely love God unless they were as infinite as God, and had an understanding of his perfections equal with himself, and as immense as his own knowledge. God, having an infinite knowledge of himself, can only have an infinite love to himself, and consequently an infinite holiness without any defect, because he loves himself according to the vastness of his own amiableness, which no finite being can. Therefore, though the angels be exempt from corruption and soil, they cannot enter into comparison with the purity of God, without acknowledgement of a dimness in themselves. Besides, he charges them with folly and puts no trust in them, because they have the power of sinning, though not the act of sinning. They have a possible folly in their own nature to be charged with. Holiness is a quality separable from them, but it is inseparable from God. That is a comparison of the holiness of God to angelic beings that we just don't hear any longer. And the other thing that we don't hear, that we heard from Charnock there, is God's love for himself. Now, I think John Piper, for example, has done an incredible job of recovering that truth. But I think more needs to be done in the area of expounding not only the aseity of God, the perfections of God, but also the divine intra-Trinitarian love of God. Because the truth, in fact, is that only God is capable of fully and truly enjoying God. Well, that was your Puritan rant for today.